Well, thank you for being here. And this is a story about silence, and I want to share with you this story, this journey of silence, in a way that I have never shared with anyone before. So I want to go back to the time there was an oil spill that happened. I gave up riding in cars. My parents thought I was crazy, and so did the people in my community. They thought I was crazy too. And the point of not speaking was to actually give my community a gift, because I just kind of talked so much, you know. I spoke a lot about things that I didn't know, and I just kept talking and talking, and I would get into arguments, and so I really wanted to get out of that place. Silence is something that's not unfamiliar to humans. It started back in, well, I'm sure back before we first started talking. But in the 1st century AD, the Greek philosopher Apollonius of Tyana was reportedly silent for 5 years. And what's so great about that? A philosopher who didn't speak. I guess that's something, that's news. And so he didn't speak for 5 years, and he went around in Greece, and he became so famous that he could quell riots by just showing up and making a nod. Like, you know, some people were arguing about the way a certain ceremony was being done, or a way a certain dance was done, and Apollonius would show up, and he'd kind of look at them, and they would see the folly of their ways, the silliness of their argument, and so they would stop. And it's reported that even once he quelled a food riot, where there were a group of people who were holding on to the food, and they were threatening the town magistrate, who was, thank God Apollonius is here. Can you do something? Can you say something? And of course Apollonius didn't say anything at all, but that was the whole point. And pretty soon, just because he had showed up, the people who had stopped their riot and the people who were hoarding the food started giving it out. Nothing like that happened for me. Because if it did, I would be there. You know, there's a lot of places where we could use some peace. But for me, what I had to do was on the first day of the year, I decided I was going to start painting. Now I'm still talking, and I want to show you these paintings. No one has seen these paintings. This is from back in 1973. The first painting I ever made is a watercolor. Don't laugh. But if you are an artist and you can look at my painting and you go that it's got a long ways to go. This is Sunrise on Tomales Bay. And Sunrise on Tomales Bay was my first major painting. I had the book I used was it cost 69 cents. The paints were a 39-cent little roll of paints. And I'd gotten this for Christmas. And so my New Year's resolution was to paint every day. And so this was my first painting. My second painting. Well, keeping a journal is a really good thing because you get to see where you were before. So these are artifacts from many years ago, and I get to look at where I was before. Now, how I used these when I started was that I would take them and show people, and they would say, wow, man, that's really nice. What is that? Well, that was a periwinkle. I mean, periwinkle, you know, it didn't quite look like doesn't matter what it looked like. It was my representation of a periwinkle. And that's all I did. And that was an important part of my day. Tomales Bay, my first tree. This was going along really well, and then something happened. Something happened in February when I discovered bamboo. I discovered bamboo, and I thought that this was a beautiful plant. And what I didn't realize, but I discovered as well, is that the word was ubiquitous. And that meant that it was everywhere. And I discovered that bamboo was everywhere, so I decided that I was not going to mess around with mountains and trees and things anymore. I was going to work on bamboo. And so that's what I did. I started painting bamboo. I would sit down, and I would sit in front of a stalk of bamboo, and I'd start painting. It was really very restful, I found. It was more than restful. As I started painting, you can notice that there is something about the way that bamboo lent itself to being painted, but not all of it needing to be painted, that there were spaces that could represent where bamboo was, but the paint wasn't. And I started experimenting with that there was this negative space, this silent space, this silence, this stillness. And bamboo took me on this journey. Because when I first started not speaking, I thought, well, gee, this is great. This is going to help me in a way. This is going to help me learn to listen. Another thing that it started to help me realize was that when I did speak with the, can you get that one? Yeah, the forked tongue there. That was a problem I had of kind of exaggerating. Exaggerations going into great stories and great stories going into absolute lies. But I did that for a reason. The reason was I was always trying to be someone else. I was not satisfied with being who I was. I'd lost that person a long time ago trying to pretend to be someone else, trying to be like someone else. And for me as an African American, you have to understand that as I was growing up in the 50s, there weren't very many models for me to look forward to. Well, there was, Booker T. Washington. There was Frederick Douglass, of course. There was, Jackie Robinson. But then there was Kingfish. And then there was the guys I saw in the newspapers. The pictures of people I saw in the newspapers were mostly criminals. And so I tried to be anything but who I was. That got me into big trouble because I was so good at pretending that I pretended so well that I lost the person that I was. I didn't know who that person was anymore. And so the silence, the not speaking, allowed me to rediscover that person. So I say all this to you now, and I want you to know that it's all documented. It's documented in painting and in writing. And this is what happened after the silence. I continued painting bamboo until finally I could break out of that, and I started painting larger landscapes and with words. Now this is 8 months later. 8 months after I had stopped speaking, I started writing. Because when I stopped speaking at first, I didn't write at all. And how did I communicate? It was all by sign. It was all by mime. It was all by acting things out. I want some tea. I'm in the restaurant and I need If I don't want tea, I want... It was very good, but it really takes two. And so I started to paint and write. And you can see my paintings are starting to change now. I'm using pen and ink, and I'm using the pen, and I've never read these out. I would use these books now. I'm traveling around in my village and up to other villages. I would use these books to say where I had been. They were the communication and music. And so I want to read this to you. This will be the first time I've read this to an audience. And this is a picture of Inverness, where I had been living. And this is October 9, 1973, sitting on a wooden bench in front of the Inverness post office. The morning is new. The mist still envelops the mountain across the bay. Business goes on as usual, and a familiar pattern unfolds as the mist disappears. The mountain calls. Many steps later, Point Reyes Station and Inverness lay below in the distance. Paper Mill Creek winds lazily through the meadow on its way to the bay, and the incoming fog is held momentarily by the ridge before spilling through the pines. Now, this is all those many years ago, and I'm not speaking, so this is all coming out of a place of silence for me. This is coming out of a place where I'm just letting myself write, but I'm only writing about the natural environment. And that's another thing I have to go through, to just write about what's going on around me in nature. I'm going to read one more of these. This is, the air is clean and the sky is clear, save for a few high puffs of clouds on the bay. The tide moves in, and the hillsides have begun to sprout their winter greenery. The wind comes in from the ocean, and more clouds gather. The music is here now. The mountain sings. The seasons are slowly changing while sitting on the dock in Inverness. Thank you. Well, music has become a part of my journey now. Listening to natural sounds, I'm very fortunate to be living in this beautiful place, listening to water up against the shore, and the wind in the trees, and the jays, and all the sounds that are in nature, being able to hear those, and walking in this area. So it's really a wonderful thing for me, but there was something else that's inside of me that needed to come out, and that had to do with journey and pilgrimage and a vision quest. It happened on Christmas, the day before Christmas, I guess. I got a large bag of toys Well, I've been making these toys all along because when you're not riding in cars and you're not talking, you have a lot of time to do things like make little toy figures out of wood and paint little paintings. And I had some bees, actually, and I could make some honey. And my mother gave me the recipe for her sticky bun recipe, and I made sticky buns. And for Christmas, so on Christmas Eve, I took a big bag and I went walking around Inverness and Point Reyes and all night long delivering things. I was Santa. And when I would come to some houses, people would bring their kids, wake up, wake him up, wake Willie up, because Santa's down there. He's right down there right now. I looked like a very different Santa than on the packages and things like that. But I was Santa that year, and it was really a great time. And then at the next day, I decided that I was going on a vision quest. I found myself on this vision quest, and I painted a poem over the next 5 days until the first of the year. And I want to share that poem with you and the paintings. It's about Manito. Manito is the Great Spirit. It's a word for Great Spirit in a lot of the indigenous cultures, North American, Native Americans. And I began on Christmas Day, and this is a poem that goes over that time. And so on December 25th, 1973, and this is the year that I had stopped talking, so a lot of things are happening for me. I've become so creative. I've never done anything like this. I've never painted, and I've never kept a journal. I couldn't do anything one day at a time. If someone would say, they'd say, oh, well, you know, John could do that for a little bit. As my dad would say, yeah, man, you're hot and sweaty. Which means that you just do something for a little bit till you get hot, till you start sweating, you want to do something else. And that's what I was. My dad was right. I was hot and sweaty man. And he was from the islands, and family is from Antigua. And that's a whole story in itself. But on this day, I began this poem. And upon the road, empty sack, full heart, clouds play amongst the mountains. Tide rushes toward the sea, returning. Wind whispers softly in the trees. Feather dance lying on the road. One flight is done, another just begun. Manito calls. Manito is the rain today, wetting road and making clay. Manito is a drop on leaf, enlarging worlds beyond belief. Manito is the screaming jay wanting rain to go away. Manito is the flower. Manito sits upon the tree. Manito rain drips from the leaves, letting go of shape and form. Manito is the endless sky, letting body, feathers torn, fall to earth. Manito is the tear. Manito is the mountain steep hidden by a misty sheet. Manito is the yellow gold of daffodils as they unfold. Manito also, that unseen something, rather like a dream. Manito is the fragrance. Manito is the warming sun, gracing sky when storm is done. Manito is the one that fell, passing through life's wondrous spell. Singing frogs, dancing trees, Manito makes up all of these. Manito is the spellcaster. Manito is a salmon strong returning here from sea to spawn. Here in swishing shallow stream, where red does flash among the green and gentle rain upon the trees, the voices of the stream of Manito, quiet voice, splash. Manito is a great spirit. There were lots of times when I didn't paint anything, And this is one of them, when I would just paint a circle with a dot in it, and let that circle be for one day, and then the next day I would paint another circle with a dot in it. And where was I? I mean, I was in this place again where things had just fallen away, and I was just kind of at one with everything, with the planet, with myself, with the grass, with the people, with the deer and all the little critters, all our relations. And so this is the kind of painting that I made. It doesn't have to be a complex something. You don't have to sit down and make a wonderful drawing that, oh yes, it's just to remind you, just a symbolic thing that can bring out what's inside you, and that you can share that with those of us around you, because we will share it. I mean, we will share the peace that you have. It will become our peace. And when we actually care for each other that way, I believe this is going to change. This is what's going to change the planet. That as we understand that we are all the environment, and that how we treat each other is really how we treat the environment and how it manifests into the physical world. I guess it's easy to say, if we treated each other with love and respect, that's how the environment would be treated. Sustainability is in our relationships with ourselves and with each other. And I believe that sustainability is something that we're going to get to through this appreciation of being silent and being at peace with each other.